You're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get Eatfluenced. Welcome back to the Eatfluencer Podcast. I'm Maggie, your host here, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. You are listening to episode 36. This is another top 10 anti-diet Q&A, a new list, 10 common questions. But before we get into this episode, I want to introduce myself quickly. If you are a new listener, I'm a physician and public health nutritionist. I am working now in this anti-diet space. I almost said wellness, but wellness is a word that really has me burned up in many ways. But I am the diet disruptor, and I am here to provide you information based on science about why diet culture, healthcare, and the diet industry has this wrong. We're going to uncouple all of those social beliefs from scientific fact and do it in a way that's conversational and consumable to anybody. This is not like being in school. I don't want this to sound like a lecture. I want this to be something you're energized by, and I hope you enjoy the content that I provide on this podcast. Thanks so much for being here today, and as always, before I get into today's episode with the top 10 anti-diet questions, though, I have got an announcement, people. I'm doing it. I am starting a private Facebook group, and we are going to be called The Diet Disruptors with Maggie Landes MD. And I waited a really long time to do this. And I will be honest that I was motivated greatly by a new business coach that I'm working with. But I wanted a place where we could all get together and talk about these things. The podcast is outstanding, of course, but it's one way. And the content I put on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, I am very proud of, and I love when people engage and comment and send me messages about it, but we're not talking to each other. I want a community where we're all equals. I wanted a place that felt safe, that felt supported, not judged, and wasn't so public as just commenting on social media posts. So as much as I am a member of many, many Facebook groups that I do not engage in and are sitting there in the digital wasteland of Facebook grouping, this one's not going to be like that. You are going to want to join. You are going to want to engage. You are going to want to stay because it is going to be that fun. And if you haven't learned anything from me yet, I'm creative and I will think outside the box of ways to really make this a place you want to be, you want to check in on, and you're going to make connections and frankly friends that I think are going to support you well in this journey out of diet culture. So the link in the show notes for this podcast episode has the link. I literally just started this group yesterday. So it's brand spanking new, and I want you to be in on the ground floor, founding member. Please click that link. It'll take you exactly where you need to go to get in there. Okay, so that's it. Let's get on with today's episode. I do want to point you, I did a top 10 Q&A episode back in February. It was episode number 19, and it aired on February 10th, 2021. I thought it was a pretty cool format, and I got a lot of good feedback. I went over 10 of the most commonly asked questions that I get asked, and I tried to answer each one in a really quick, maybe minute and a half, 2-minute answer, so that, you could get the answer without getting totally derailed by a long explanation. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. It's episode 19. Today I'm going to do the same exact thing, but I have 10 new questions. So this is not a replay or a repurposing of the first one. This is actually 10 additional common questions that I get asked. So I encourage you to listen, even if you're a anti-diet expert or a professional working in this space, which I know many of my listeners are. I encourage you to stay and listen, because just hearing me explain how I explain this may give you a little nuance to how you work with your clients or patients. I learn all the time listening to other people answer questions that I already know the answer to. So I want you to stay, please. And the other thing too is, I think one of our problems in general in this wellness health culture is there's too much information. I mean, people are not confused and stuck and frustrated and sick because they can't find something out. The problem is they're finding out way more than their scope of knowledge can support, and it's being taken way out of context. And I just think that too much can be too overwhelming, and actually there's a sort of place of diminishing returns where information keeps us stuck rather than propels us forward. So I want you to know today that I'm talking to you. You probably have thought of these questions yourself. Some of you have maybe even asked me these questions, but certainly they're in your head, and I hope that we get through these. I'm going to try to be like super efficient so we don't go on and on and on, maybe like 2 minutes a piece, and I'd love to hear your feedback. So send me a message or leave me a review in the podcast review, and that would be awesome. So number one, here we go. We're jumping in. Now, I will say, with a disclaimer, this number one question is a repeat from the first list. It is the only one that is a repeat from the first list because it is so worth repeating. And I know you're not all going to go back to episode 19, so I have to say this, but I get this question more from health professionals, but I get this from everybody. And the question is, how can you say that fat bodies can be healthy? Well, that is a fair question when we have been told by everybody, including medical professionals, including the diet industry, including dietitians and nutritionists and coaches and fitness people and everything, that we have to be skinny to be healthy. There's two things you need to know about this. First of all, health and weight may be correlated or associated in some of the studies that all these professionals like to throw at you, but there is not a single piece of literature, to my knowledge, that shows it is causative, that they have a causative relationship. And that is super important to understand. And if you want more of an explanation on that, go back to my Health at Every Size episode. I don't have the list here off the top of my head, but just look under my podcast and you'll find that one. This is the crux of understanding research and scientific literature. You've got to understand the difference between correlation and causation. But that being said, I'm not saying fat bodies are healthier or unhealthier, or that skinny bodies are healthier or unhealthier. What I'm saying is that health is measured by health, not weight. You don't die or get disease from being fat. You die or get disease from having inflammation and high blood pressure and atherosclerosis and blah, 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 blah. I can go on a big list, but let's just take the conversation of the body shape off the table, because that's not actually the problem. Health at every size really means that health is attainable at every size. Health promoting behavior can be taken on at any size. And just your anecdotal experience. There are people in large bodies that are super active, super strong, super healthy, do not have a single negative health biomarker, and are probably going to outlive all of us. And there are buku tons of miserable, very thin, very sick people. So, we just need to take the conversation of weight off the table and talk about health, because we're talking about health. Okay, next question. Number 2. Why do you not like the term obesity or obese or overweight? Good question. And you'll notice that a lot of people working in this space, sometimes we reference the term obesity because that is the cultural vernacular, and we have to like it's you can't talk about something without at least mentioning what it is you're talking about. There's only so much beating around the bush, but a lot of us will sometimes put an asterisk or a little caret or something in the middle of the word when we type it out so that it looks clearly like we are deliberately pointing at it rather than utilizing it. And here's the problem with these terms. And I would throw underweight as a term too that I don't like, because when you start saying over, under, by default, you are measuring the thing that's over or under against some sort of, quote, normal. And there is no such thing as one universal, normal, ideal weight. There's not. Even if I know if you're a man or a woman, even if I know how tall you are, which is what the little calculators say, you figure out your, quote, ideal weight by putting in if you're male or female and how tall you are, and then it spits out a weight. That's asinine. To think that it is that simplistic, that our weight regulation is that simplistic, that's just ignorant, frankly. So when we say over or under weight, that means over or under that normal, which is bogus. All right. It's a total distractor from the conversation about health. Ergo, the question I just mentioned. Let me make an analogy that might make sense. Okay. So, but I know people always throw back that association, but there's higher rates of disease that are associated with obese or overweight people or whatever. Okay. That's the whole thing about association. It just means that two things occur with higher frequency together. It doesn't mean that one causes the other. So, for example, here's a perfect analogy. We know, this is a fact, that there is higher rates of diabetes in indigent people, poor people. Okay? There's an association between living in poverty and developing diabetes. Okay? That does not mean that, being poor makes you have diabetes. It doesn't mean that there's not poor people who are healthy or rich people who don't have diabetes. Okay. And we don't screen for diabetes by looking at your tax return to determine if you're poor or rich, and then we label you with diabetes or not diabetes. Okay. Is that a good analogy? That is exactly what we're doing with the scale. Is we say, oh, we care about diabetes, so we have to figure out your BMI. So we put you on the scale, we slap a label underweight, overweight, i.e. rich or poor in the analogy, and then we say you have diabetes or you're at risk for diabetes, when really we're not even talking about the actual risk. We're just talking about this distracting labeling arbitrary tool. So I want to let you know that's why I don't use the word obesity or overweight to describe a person's body or my own body, or when I'm teaching, if I'm using those terms, it's only merely to point to the narrative that we have made, them turn into. So that's it. Question number 2. Number 3, if I don't have rules and diets, I will only eat junk food. Okay, well, this is actually a statement and not a question, but I get this so much. And I think the question behind that statement is, how will I be able to trust myself around junk food if I don't have a diet or a rule book or a set of guidelines? Well, the short answer to that is that intuitive eating actually works. Your body actually knows what it needs to eat and is smarter than you, smarter than the diet plan you are subscribing to. We have to get out of our own way. And so much of that overeating and that compulsion and that like magnetizing attraction to, quote, junk food is because we're restricting it. It's pure and simple. That is how it works. And I've explained this in a lot of detail in other episodes, and I don't want to get into the whole conversation here because it's quite lengthy. But the bottom line is, when you stop restricting, the wild, chaotic behavior around food diminishes and ultimately stops. So you have to just trust. You have to trust the process. You have to trust your body, trust yourself, and try it. And if you don't trust yourself, trust me. Okay, I'm here to help you do this, but that's the problem. When you're in diet culture and all you see is rules and all you feel is chaos, you will have the belief that all you'll eat is, quote, junk when you stop. But that's not how it works when you actually stop. So I just want to reassure you, intuitive eating works. It is possible for everybody. We are born intuitive eaters. And, that is something that is within your reach. Okay, number 4 question. How am I supposed to know what is healthy to eat if I don't have a diet? Okay, and when we say healthy in air quotes, I think what most people are referring to is nutrient-dense foods, and that's the term I prefer because healthy has a lot of morality and sort of arrogance in it that I don't think we need to imply. We're just talking about nutrient-dense foods. And absolutely, I know much about this. I teach about this. This is the gentle nutrition component of intuitive eating. So when we talk about undieting and stopping this restriction, we're not saying that all foods are equal in nutrient density. We're saying all foods are neutral in morality. That's what we're saying. But there is a difference in nutrient density of different foods. Obviously. People, come on. But the problem is we take a little bit of information, just like I said at the top of this episode, and take it so far out of context that, we read these labels and look at the nutritional content of foods and make it a biblical dictum. And this rigidity and this tighter restriction on rules does not help it stick. All right. And it's punishing and exhausting and really, frankly, unrealistic. And we always try to double down. So it's like, oh, if this is good, then more of this is better. And if this is, there's no such thing as super magical foods. It's just food. And there are nutrient dense foods that your body will need to optimally operate and thrive. And that's what it is going to ask for. Your body is going to ask for when you stop all the metacognitive restriction and trying to override and micromanage your appetite and your hunger signals and your satiety. So you can learn lots about nutrient density of food and, quote, healthy food. And really the trick is learning how to cook it and how to prepare it and where to access it and, all the things that make it consumable, because we can talk about it all day long, but you have to actually put food in mouth. So I've got a lot of trips. I've got a lot of tips on how to do this. And if you follow me, if you join my Facebook group, we'll talk about some of this really brass tacks of cooking and preparing things like vegetables and, fruits and, how to prepare different kinds of proteins and stuff like that. But the idea is to add rather than subtract. Boy, I can hardly talk today. The idea is to look at this with an open-mindedness rather than a restrictive, boxed-in perspective, and start thinking about nutrient-dense foods you can add and what you can do to them to make them tasty and palatable. And the nutrient density in the food is not negated if you do something to the food to make it tasty and interesting to you. So, like veggies, if you want to dip veggies in dip or cook them in butter, or you want to put dressing on your salad, God forbid, then that's okay. It doesn't undo the nutrition that's in the vegetables because you put ranch dip with it. All right. And if that's the way that you are going to start incorporating, adding, increasing variety, then do it. That's what you need to do. Okay. Number 5, I don't, quote, feel like myself. So how can I, quote, feel like myself again without trying to lose weight? Okay, well, let's just back up here, folks, because fat, or skinny for that matter, is not a feeling. All right, that's a physical description, the way that you have blonde hair or green eyes or you're wearing a pink t-shirt. All right. A feeling is a feeling. We need to be honest about what is a feeling. What is it you're saying when you say that? You want to be more flexible. You want more energy. You want to be accepted. You want to feel less lonely. You want to be entertained. I mean, what is the feeling? The feeling. All right. There's a lot of answers to the question of how you're going to, quote, feel like yourself again without the pursuit of weight loss. And I can help you. There are other people that can help you. But we have to first, before we do any of that, be honest about what is a feeling and what is a total distraction. Because you can pursue weight loss and be miserable and do all the things that you've done for many, many, many years. And I promise you, if you don't address the feelings behind why you're so miserable, you will still feel totally miserable and wear smaller pants for a little while till you gain all the weight back. So, we need to stop using this weight loss as an excuse to avoid dealing with the garbage feelings that we have and the garbage thoughts in our head. So I'd encourage you to do that first. Really nail down what the feeling is that you don't feel like yourself, and don't let the size of your pants be on that list, because that's not a feeling. That's just a fact. Okay, number 6. This is all great. How do I find a health at every size doctor to take care of me, or provider? Well, here's the first very sad news. Good freaking luck. This is super, super challenging. I am countercultural to how most doctors and practitioners think about food, think about weight, think about nutrition. So there is a high likelihood that picking a doctor will be a diet culture experience. There is a resource, HAEScommunity.com. So HAES community, which is health at every size. Okay, community.com is a repository of sort of a directory of sorts. And you can pick whether you're looking for a doctor, a therapist, a dentist, a psychiatrist, a dietitian, whatever profession you're looking for. And there will be a list of HAES-aligned providers. But let me preface this by saying this specific resource, which is the only one I actually even know of, is super, super lacking. Like, for example, if you put physician Texas, there's one name that pops up. One. That's not good, folks. Okay, so I think that it's going to be challenging. You can ask. You can always, when you're looking for a new provider, you can always ask, email, call the office, and ask about health at every size. Don't be shocked if the person on the other end of the phone doesn't even know what you're talking about. That would be a common scenario. So while you're searching, I still want you to go to the doctor or the therapist or wherever you're going. And so I want to have you keep following here, gain some tools of how to navigate that conversation, how to navigate those visits, because the chance of you having a truly HAES-aligned provider at this point in the year 2021 is fairly slim. Now, I'm out to change that. So I hope in my lifetime and in your lifetime that is not true anymore. But for now, I have to let you know that's the only resource that I am aware of. Okay, number 7. Oh, this is related to number 6. So how do I get my doctor to stop badgering me about my weight and have every visit all about weight? Okay, well, the first thing is you've got to set some boundaries. And I know that when you go to a provider, you as the patient or client are sort of in a position of submission a little bit. It's just the dynamic that's there, but you've got to set boundaries, starting with the very, very, very first thing of not being weighed and declining weight. All right, there's a very few medical reasons you might need to be weighed. I mean, I can count them on one hand. All right, really, truly can count them probably on one hand. So unless you have one of those very specific conditions where, weight is extremely important for that visit, it's really a travesty because every patient gets weighed every single time. And there are so many doctors and providers throwing out weight loss advice and telling patients to lose weight, eat less, move more, all that crap advice without ever even asking a question about what they're eating now or how they're exercising now or screening for eating disorders or food insecurity or those sorts of things. I think that's frankly negligent, but it's another platform, another soapbox I'll stand on another time. But here's what you need to do. Have a conversation ahead of time. Either email, talk to the nurse, call the office, or at the last chance, bring a written card or a little note to your visit that says, I would like to focus on blank today. And discussions of my body are really not relevant and I'd prefer not to have them. All right. So you want to focus on your migraines. You want to focus on your arthritis, focus on your whatever it is, not, and just sort of that gives them the little nod, like, I hear you, but we're not talking about that today. All right. And this is a whole other podcast, honestly, of how to talk to medical professionals when you're the patient. Because there is a way to do it. And I will tell you from the doctor end of things, when patients become aggressive and confrontational and arrogant and know-it-all, that is a major disruption to the doctor-patient relationship. And it's not you don't have to be like that. All right. You don't have to be like that in order to advocate for yourself. So you are allowed to drive the bus in terms of conversations, and I will encourage you to do that. And I've got lots of tools to help you do that in a practical sense. Okay. Question number 8. We're doing pretty good. I think I'm doing about 2 minutes a question. So number 8, what is the set point weight you keep talking about? Okay. So I know what you want me to say. You want me to give you some sort of calculation or a number or some sort of app or something that you plug in some information and it gives you your set point weight. Okay, it doesn't work that way. That's how these ideal body weight calculators have worked forever. And it's just not, you can't figure it out on the front end is what I'm trying to say. This set point weight is first of all, it's not a singular number. It is a range of weight where your body operates optimally, comfortably, without dieting, without restriction, without this like super controlling behavior that affects your weight. So the corollary of that is that you're not going to know what the set point weight is until you stop dieting, because that's how you find it. It's not an app or a calculation or some sort of benchmark. So let's not worry about trying to figure it out, because that just gives you a number that you want to put in your head and make a weight loss goal, which is what we're trying to not do. So just set the whole idea of set point weight aside and don't get obsessed with it. Just know that it's there and that your body will find it when you do the part that's your responsibility, which is taking action and actionable steps. So we've talked about it many, many times. Weight, your body weight, is not an action. It's not a behavior. So we need to focus on the behaviors that may or may not affect your weight. Because we don't care about weight, we care about health. But the behaviors will with certainty affect your health in a positive way. So those are the things that we've talked over and over about: getting sleep, managing stress, hydrating, increasing nutrient-dense foods, not being sedentary, stop smoking, manage your alcohol consumption, like all these things, okay? So that's what you do. Figuring out, I'm doing air quotes, figuring out your set point weight and then making that your new weight loss goal is not what you do. So yes, I appreciate the question, but I'm going to redirect you to something that you can do. Okay. Number 10. Oh, no, number 9. We're on number 9. What do I do if my kids are, quote, overweight or have gained weight during the pandemic and I'm being badgered by other people about that, including my pediatrician? Okay. This is me talking as a anti-diet professional, as a nutritionist, as a pediatrician, as a mother. Children should never be put on a restrictive diet. Never. And of course, if you have, PKU and you can't have this or whatever, you've got an allergy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a restrictive weight loss diet. Never. Okay, number 1, regarding the pandemic, give them a freaking break. Okay, the amount of stress and changes in your body that have happened to you in the last year, can you imagine the stress, even just to put the body aside, the psychological stress of a child? Think of how immature your processing was when you were a teenager, or you were 9, or you were 5 years old, and the world shut down, and your parents were stressed, and everything changed. Everything it changed, but you didn't really understand exactly what was going on. Okay, that stress is real. the kids have had a stressful experience too. So first of all, let's just give them a freaking break and not pull up to the reopening of the world with a big station wagon of weight shaming to put on our children who have been through the ringer. All right. The second thing is the kids don't need to do anything different than what you do. They're great intuitive eaters if you let them do it. They are, in fact, closer to intuitive eating than we are, because a child, a baby, is the quintessential version of a intuitive eating human. So they're better than we are. They have less diet culture baggage to unravel. So don't do anything special or different for them than you're trying to do for yourself, all right? And that means identifying health-promoting behaviors, all those good things that you're going to add, including food, movement, activities, water, sleep, stress reduction, and take the conversation off of the body and the restriction and the things that are contraband and off limits and all that sort of thing. Just stop talking about their bodies, period. Their bodies work. Their bodies want to work. And you can encourage them by adding all these good things, because that's what their body needs and that's what they're totally capable of doing. And you're capable of it too. And then now you can do it together. And if you have children, there is no better reason to get on this bus than the fact that you want to break this diet culture cycle for the next generation. So that's what I have to say about that. All right. And then the last question I'm going to address today is, how do you know all this and other doctors / my doctor, nutritionist, dietitian, trainer, etc. don't? Well, I'm nothing special. Let me first to say that the reason I am in this space, that I have done all this work in this space, learning about it, is because I've taken it on myself. Our education as professionals, whether that's medical school, nutrition graduate school, fitness training, physical therapy, wherever you come from professionally, that education is biased and influenced by diet culture and fat phobia. Period. Full stop. When you realize that, and then you take on this entire independent study like I have done, the science really supports what I am doing. And to be honest, most health professionals just haven't done that because, and I don't entirely blame them. If we're told something in our professional training by a professor or a professional, another more senior level person, we take it at face value. You're sitting in biochemistry class in medical school and somebody in a white coat tells you that everybody needs to lose weight or they'll die. You just you're drinking from the fire hose at that point. So you just have to take the information and move on. But now that I'm at a point in my career that I could actually stop and question some of the things I was learning, saying, and doing, I realize now that lots of the nutrition information being doled out by health professionals is based on diet culture, based on very small little anecdotal type stories and histories of a couple of other patients, personal experience. There's so much influencing us, we don't even realize it's influencing us as providers. And it absolutely is like a total mystery to the consumer, to the client, to the patient, that we would be not actually providing the scientifically supported theory, which is that promotion of weight loss focused dieting does not improve health. And, but let me tell you this, I'm not throwing the individual people under the bus because our system is broken. The infrastructure we practice in does not facilitate independent learning, does not facilitate conversations, does not facilitate empathy. It's just not built that way. But the fact that I'm here getting airtime and you're listening and it's going in your ears and there's people joining my Facebook group and people wanting to have these conversations is, it gives me hope that we together can change this narrative. Because once it changes, it is going to change. And mark my words, it is going to be like wildfire. But we just have got to set the flame first. And I'm glad you're here. So there we go. That wraps up the list. Another 10 top 10 common anti-diet questions I'm asked. And if you liked this, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to point you back to episode 19, which I did a few months ago. And that was another list of top 10 common questions that really got a lot of questions answered for people and thoughts they were having. So thanks for reviewing and rating my podcast if you have a quick second, and make sure you check out the show notes. In the show notes is the link to my brand spanking new Facebook group, The Diet Disruptors with Maggie Landes MD on Facebook. I am requiring a email opt-in because I want committed people. I want this to be a great Facebook group. I do not want to just gather thousands of boring, uninvolved, half-interesting, ho-hum groupies that click on the link and then never show back up. I am done messing around with that. I am looking for action takers, change makers, people that want out of diet culture and want my help. So the link is there in the show notes. I hope that you find it and join. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with you on the Eatfluencer podcast. Every Wednesday is a new episode. Thanks for being here today, and I'll see you until next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.